Welcome to Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors. And this is Power of the Tribe podcast. And that music was written and provided by Scott Miller, man.
Yes, and I know everyone listening is they hear the music and it's just at a gut level. They get super excited.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, it's another Power. I get to listen to a new Power of the Tribe podcast. And today's Uplifting Friday.
Uplifting Friday. I'm here with Jan Robin, the man who will uplift you. Dr. Dan will uplift you without medications.
Yep, followed solid 7 out of 10.
He might give you medications if you ask him nicely, but we're going to try to do it without medication.
I know a guy.
I think just about everybody's on medication at this point. Yeah. But seriously, thank you, Scott Miller. I don't say that enough. It was so generous.
We haven't thanked Scott enough, right? Not since it started.
Yeah, awesome. And it's January 10th, 2020.
Yep. New Year's rolling along.
We've had a pretty mild winter. It's not that bad out today.
My resolutions, even though I didn't really have one, kicked back in. I was horrifically unhealthy for the holidays.
And you look freaking great, man.
I've pulled it back in.
I have not pulled it back in yet. I'm 5 pounds over my training weight.
Actually, but this is an interesting thing about getting like out of shape or out of jiu-jitsu or out of anything and pulling it back in.
Okay.
That's what everyone struggles with, it, right? Like everyone goes on a run of jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
You've seen it yourself, right? They go on a run where they're like, I love this. Usually they're 1 or 2 weeks in. Right? And they're like, it's my life. I love it. And then they all quit.
They post on Facebook, jiu-jitsu is life.
Right. But you've seen it with yoga yourself personally,
totally
right?
Yoga.
They're like,
Yeah.
I can't, this is life-changing to me. Yoga. It doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
The gym, lifting weights, running, anything. People are like, this is amazing. And then they're so excited. And they mean it. They're not lying.
Mean it.
And then gone.
So
there's a few things. But
it's a lot like my love life, too.
It's all amazing. Gone.
Exactly that.
Right. But it's sort of but if people could figure that out, I think it would help a lot.
Dan, you just stumbled upon something really important in...
Why do you assume stumble upon this way? But go on. I just want to say...
What is that thing? You get an infinite number of monkeys banging on a typewriter?
The broken clock.
No, you're right. Okay. You've come upon a really important point. Actually, I emphasize this when we're doing our focusing drill in class, or it's basically meditation. If you're focusing on your breath, the trap some people fall into is they get distracted and then they chastise themselves. Shit, I wasn't paying attention to my breath. I'm no good at this meditation. What am I doing? Where the whole practice is the pulling back of your focus. You know what I mean? It's not even actually the focusing. It's like once you lose your focus, how are you going to bring your attention back? It's learning how to control your attention, which is the whole thing.
And because I think at a broader level, people underestimate how much you change from like day to day or month to month or year to year, whatever you want to call it, whatever time frame you want to use. So that they underestimate. I used to always joke, years ago about, and many, I've heard that other people say this kind of thing, which was like I used to say morning Dan and night Dan hate each other. So like,
what do you mean? Oh, because night Dan stays up really late.
No, night Dan is like, but also stays up late and is like, you know what I should do? Work out tomorrow. I'm setting the alarm at 4:30, and then I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna get my reps in before by 6 o'clock. I'll have done CrossFit or whatever. And then morning Dan, the alarm goes off, and morning Dan's like, did night Dan set the goddamn alarm at 4:30 again? Like, what is that maniac doing?
I have to have a talk with that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and turning it off, like, jackass, let me sleep. And then I get back to night Dan is like,
that lazy piece of shit morning Dan.
Exactly. Turned off the alarm again. That piece of crap. So, like, there's the constant war. And morning Dan's like, did night Dan drink again? Like, what? Like, what is he doing? He knew I had to get up. You see what I mean? Do you see what I mean?
I see what you mean. Interesting.
They hate each other.
They hate each other.
And
but
so
Dan is more fun, I think, than
Yeah, but morning
not
dance.
actually.
It depends, though. It depends.
Yeah.
Night dance sometimes wants you to get up and work out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so they both have their claim. You know,
Yeah.
they both have
Plus
their argument.
minuses. Yeah.
But I think that applies to a lot. You know what I mean? Like, also, that's why you see so many people take jiu-jitsu. Why there are people that are like, it's my life, and then it's gone. It's because it's like, you'll be different.
Oh, right.
That's why.
I just thought it was because
yeah.
they're idiots.
Or in the it could be some of that too. But it's also, you have like, why do you have people that, why do you have professional athletes that are like, I've thought it through, I've talked with my family, and we've gone over it for months, and I'm retiring. I'm leaving my gloves in the ring, or I'm hanging them up or whatever. And then they're like, I'm back. It's like, you don't realize, you're like, because at the time you say it, you're like, I've really thought about it. I'm really looking deep, and I don't want to do this anymore ever.
Dan,
and then a year later, they're like, I feel different now.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't feel that way anymore. Or jiu-jitsu. I myself many times have been like, I'm done. I'm out for sure. And then later I'm like, you know what? I'm back. You know what I mean? Like, I feel different now.
Yeah. Well,
and it's not that you're an idiot the first time, because you're like, you really think about it. And you're like, it's not worth it. I'm injured. I'm tired. It's not, I should focus my time on other things. And then later you're like, now I want to go.
I think so, especially for the sport of fighting, and probably jiu-jitsu, where there's a lot of pain and hard work before you get the payoff. There's space in between that. So it's easy to start to feel like it's not worth it, but then you miss the payoff, so then you can get back in. I get baffled when guys are doing something like baseball, and they're like, oh, I think I'm going to retire. It's like, oh, you're going to retire from frolicking out in the grass and getting paid tens of millions of dollars. I would be like some of these guys, like who was the base stealing king? Henderson?
Yeah. Ricky Henderson.
Ricky Henderson. I think he's still playing someplace. You know what I mean?
He's like 65.
Yeah. God bless him.
Playing in Cuba.
Yeah. Good for him. Dan, they've done research that I've read about this, where they'll ask people about their past, like, how were you 10 years ago? And they're like, well, I'm so different than I was 10 years ago. And they can point out all the differences. And then they ask them, where are you going to be 10 years from now? And they invariably say exactly the same that I am now. It's really funny. So it's completely to your point.
They can't foresee how much they're going to change and how much things are going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think. And that's why if people starting and quitting, or, you know what I mean? They're like, for one thing, I think anyone should hedge at being like, I'm done with whatever forever. You know what I mean? Like anything with like, I'm quitting forever is probably a mistake. You should sort of feel like, I feel like right now that's the way I feel, but always in the back of your mind, think maybe I'll get back. And so another thing is, so what's interesting about this, so back to like the New Year's resolution where you're like, getting healthy, and then people lose it. Like right now, I go to if anyone out there that goes to a gym, you can't park, and you can't get on machines, and you can't get on the freeways because like all the resolution people are there. But everyone knows it'll be gone in like middle of February, like every year, right? Like the gyms fill up, and then they vanish. Yeah. So it's like, so what's going on? And it's part of this. It's like people get excited, and then it vanishes. But some of it's hard.
And I suspect that, see, you're in a different situation than the average person right now. And I'll say this. It's because you got in shape, you're eating very healthy, living clean. So your body, if you do that for a certain period of time, your body retains a little of that. So if you go for a week or 2 or 3 off the rails a little bit, you can snap back relatively quickly.
Yeah, I did already.
Yeah. So, but if you've been eating processed food and not living healthy lifestyle for years,
it takes a while.
Yeah, you're going to have to put in like 8 weeks before you start to really see some results. You're not going to see results in the first month probably at all, hardly, right?
Right.
And it's going to be really hard.
Or you see like the first 2 weeks, and that's when you say it's life-changing, and then it plateaus, and then you quit. Then you're like, it's not doing it.
Then you reevaluate the effort put in compared to the results you expect.
Or what's very common, that's happened to me, and probably almost anyone that starts getting healthy or working out, and you go on vacation, something breaks it. Like for me, it was always a vacation or a distraction or something, and then it's just gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
You get off the routine.
Right. I was talking with my wife about it, who was saying, she was like, why does this happen to me? So I'll ask this. She goes, why? She wants to pinpoint. She's like, why can I be like, I'm eating, everything's perfect. I'm working out. I'm eating. I'm tracking it on an app. I'm doing everything. And then something happens, and then your mindset changes, and then you're like, I don't care about any of this. Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not tracking it. I'm not eating, like, it's gone.
Yeah.
Why does it happen? Because it happens to all of us, right? Like,
I'll tell you, there's two fundamental evolutionary reasons for that. One is human nature, or fundamental human nature, is to move toward pleasure, away from pain, and to conserve energy. So that's our default, is to just not do anything. So you're
it always takes an effort mentally.
Yeah. So you're working with that. The other thing is, we evolved over, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of years in an environment where food was relatively scarce. So when you came across anything that had high caloric content, the thing to do was wolf it down as fast as possible. And we're now in a completely different environment, especially in the last 50 years, that's counter to our evolution. So it's perfectly reasonable for people to eat as much processed food as they can, go to McDonald's. There's a reason why all these foods are high fat, high sugar, and usually high salt as well, because those are all things that we've evolved to just wolf down.
As much as you can.
Get as much as you can. So everybody's doing what they've been evolved to do. So what Lucy's trying to do is go against her evolved nature, which is tough.
But so what's a strategy when you're like, suddenly you don't care anymore?
I think you got to change your environment. So I keep saying this, and it sounds boring and repetitious, but like in my house, we only have meats and vegetables and fruits and berries and nuts. That's it. So if I'm at my house at 11 o'clock at night, and Norwood's a little bit of a sleepy town too, so it's like there is no pizza store open, or I can't get ice cream.
Plus, like we said, it's
and then I have to go out to get it.
Yeah,
so that's effort.
That's easier to stop. To be like, I'm not going. We've talked about that on this before, where maybe if it's in your freezer, you're like, I'm going to eat this ice cream.
If it's in my freezer,
be like, I'm not going to go to the store to buy ice cream like a.
But that takes effort. So now you're using your evolved nature to help you, because it's going to take effort. So I think, you have to construct your environment to help your goals. You know what I mean?
And you have to know what works for you. I talked about this. So my father-in-law is like, he lost a lot of weight, and he does from 20 years ago.
Your father and your father-in-law?
No, my father-in-law.
Your father-in-law, okay.
He lost a lot of weight he seemed to be ahead of the curve. When he first said it, like in 1999 or something, it sounded like madness. But he stopped eating flour, sugar, salt, and
he did that
and
back
booze.
in 1999 or something.
Yeah, I remember laughing
him,
at the time,
man,
like mocking him. I was like, why? Because he's like, I was like, did he just pick all the white powders?
Yeah.
Because it looked like cocaine, or, like it's just like white powders. Like, that's how silly it sounded to me at the time. 20 years later, 25 years later, I'm like, no, he nailed it, right? Like,
he nailed it.
Yeah.
Good for him. Well, that's the other thing about when you start eating these processed foods, is it's a vicious cycle. It makes you want to have more of them. Your blood sugar goes flying up and down, so then you are hungry. It stimulates you actually to eat more.
Yeah.
So it's just impossible. These people who think, oh, it's all about, the laws of thermodynamics, calories in and calories out. Well, of course it is, but you also have to account human nature, metabolism, blood sugar, all that stuff encourages you to eat way more calories than you would otherwise. But if you can clean it up, you do have less cravings.
And then again, about who you are. Like, for me, it's working to eat very rigidly during the week, and then I blow it out on the weekends. Yeah. I'm sure I do better, obviously, if I was clean the whole time. But my father-in-law was like, I could never do it. He was like, he cut it all out. He's like, I haven't had
He's got to be absolute.
Yeah. He's like, I couldn't keep, and this applies to people too with booze. And, they're like, some people have to cut it out. They're like, I can't go on the weekend, and then stop it again.
Now,
But I'm like, I can. So
Yeah.
my point is you have to
Yeah.
see who you are. Like,
Yeah.
what can you, like, what is good for you? Because my father-in-law was like, you can't do that. You like, he was disapproving. He's like, you should cut it all out. Like, now you have to keep fighting. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. Like, I'm fine.
Dan, that's a really good point. I think some people probably can't do 100% like your father-in-law did.
Right.
If they tried that, they would
Like me,
crash.
I think I might be like, forget it. It's not worth it. I'm not doing it.
Right. And you go 100% the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I can't stay on this. This is too awful. My life is
You need a really compelling reason. Why did he do it? I'm curious.
Health. I think he was more like, I was never that overweight.
I would think
but
you
he
got to
was
get a
more
health
overweight.
scare where a doctor says something alarming to you.
I don't think he really had that. I think
Huh.
I don't know exactly why.
Well, he sounds like an unusually conscientious person to be able to pull off 100%.
He was an unusual person.
Sounds like it, definitely. I heard a guy, Dan, who he got into health and eating healthy again because he went to the doctor for his physical, and the doctor looked at his blood work and all this stuff, and he was a mess, this guy. And the doctor said, so, who's the guy? And he says, who's the guy? What are you talking about? He goes, who's the guy that's going to be walking your daughter down the aisle at her wedding?
Yeah.
And he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, it's not going to be you.
No.
Your wife's going to find some other guy because you're going to be dead and gone. What a presentation.
Maniac doctor, yeah.
But it motivated the guy.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy he was like, holy cow. And he flipped it around and he got healthy.
I think I told you my doctor's like morbidly obese. So he says, like, even when I was, prior to this last weight loss, I don't know what he'd say to me now. I feel like everything's kind of humming along. But I maybe had like he'd never say my weight, but it would be like my cholesterol was a little high and my blood pressure was a little high. And he'd always be like, you should work out a little more. And it was like, like 285 pound, like 5'6" guy. It just sort of felt like it was hard for him to give the message, right? It was like,
and the reality is tweaking your diet was probably more effective and important than quote unquote working out a little bit more. Yeah.
We've talked about that on this
Yeah.
podcast before. It's by far.
Yeah.
Because I went through my whole life I've gone through phases of working out.
You have to do just an insane level of working out to outwork whatever you're eating.
Yeah.
You have to be one of these ultra marathoners or something.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
even when I was training jiu-jitsu hard twice a day, there's still a limit to what you can eat.
Because I still hear that from a lot of people where they're like, I don't really want to check my food intake, but I'll work out hard. It's like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't.
You got to do a lot
just
to burn 100 calories.
Right. But then there's people that are like, oh, work for me, and they're like 20 years old or something. And it's like, well, yeah, but just wait.
Yeah, and everybody's different. They have a different metabolism. Yeah.
I remember telling you on this podcast where it was like, it was like 225 calories or something.
Yeah.
Which is like a pretty hard run. It's like, it depends how you do it. It could be easy if you walk for half an hour or something, but I was running pretty hard. So
for how long, Dan? Do you remember?
I don't.
Like a half hour, 45 minutes?
No, less, but fast.
Fast.
That's the other thing.
Right.
People always make this mistake when I talk about running. I'll be like, I was exhausted. I ran 2 miles. And they're like, 2 miles? And I'm like, well, how fast? I did it fast. You know what I mean? Like,
that's an important factor.
Yeah, it's like you can't just, do you know what I mean? People are
Yeah.
weird about that. They're like, you're tired in 2 miles? It's like, I was running fast, though. Do it as fast as I did. Tell me if you're tired. So, like, so I was tired, but the machine I run on says, the treadmill says, like, how many calories burned. I say it was 225. Or, I'm kind of making up the number. I don't ballpark.
Which is like 2 light beers.
Yeah, exactly. For me,
2 Miller Lights.
The thing I said on this podcast was it was less than the seaweed snack that I had. Like, I had eaten seaweed because I was eating healthy. And I'm like, all right, the only snack I can have is this pathetic thing of seaweed. I'm not one of these guys, by the way, that eats healthy. And I'm like, I like carrots. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's awful. I want cookies. I'm not like, oh, the seaweed is amazing. I want Oreos. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm like,
Dan, I don't know if, Dimitri, have you noticed Dan has referenced double stuffed Oreos very frequently on this podcast?
Because I'll go after him. That's what I was saying. Like most people don't even know that you can eat Oreos by the sleeve. People don't even know that unit, the sleeve.
The sleeve.
It's like the unit for Pringles, the stack. Like it's like, so I can, go through whole things of Oreos.
Pringles. How processed are those things? They're monstrous, aren't they?
I know. Well,
People love
the Oreos.
them.
Although I like the double stuffs too. Although now I saw triple stuffs, and I was like, "That's madness! I can't stop it.
Whoa!
Stop it! Let's not get silly." So I'm a double stuff guy. But I keep referencing it because like that's what I'll eat. Like it almost seems like cheating. So when I say I lost this weight and I'm eating healthy, I'm not a guy at all who's like, and you'd be surprised, pears are tastier than chocolate chip cookie. I'm like. Because when people used to say that to me, I'd be like, well, you're different than me.
You're an idiot.
I can't hear what you're saying. You know what I mean? I'll happily have a pint of Ben & Jerry's in a sitting.
Boy, I used to do that a lot. I haven't in a while. It's pretty good, though.
Yeah. I'd have a whole pint, and it'd be like...
Did you have a flavor, go-to flavor?
I like a lot.
You like a lot of them.
I'm forgetting that. I like Cherry Garcia.
Yeah.
But I liked... there's one that has marshmallow in it. It's like chocolate with marshmallow.
Fish food or something?
Yeah, fish food.
Yeah.
Fish food's really good.
Yeah.
And then there's the half and half. And there's like a half fish food and a half cookie dough. That's my thing, too. So I could easily have that.
Dan, you looked a little lascivious there.
I'm getting like...
That's my thing.
Well, I'm hungry. I've been dieting this whole week. So I'm like, I'll probably stop off on the way home. But I could have that. And say it wasn't bad for you. I could easily have a pint of ice cream and then have like another pint of ice cream.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'd ever, or like double stuffed Oreos, I don't think I ever have stopped eating them because I'm full. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
Or I don't feel like having any more.
Right.
Like my body doesn't go, okay, that's enough Oreos.
They work that way somehow.
I'm just like, I want more. I have to consciously be like, I should stop.
Right.
So like, I think it's the eating habits of an obese person. So here it's like, what's
I think
in
it's
front
our
of you
natural system, like our your blood sugar spikes, so you get a bunch of insulin, and that makes you want to eat more, and it's just a vicious circle.
I don't ever feel like, oh no, I couldn't. I'm always like, I just better stop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like, oh, I can't even look at it anymore. It's always the opposite. It's like that with anything with me. I never feel like I should. The only time I stop anything in life is when I'm like, I better. Right? I don't think I ever feel like stopping anything. I'm just always like, I better stop. I think.
Thank God you have that
I know exactly.
circuit in your brain that comes on every once in a while.
That's a good point. If I didn't have that, whatever it is, the ability to notice it or willpower or whatever, like,
I don't know
who
what
knows what would happen. Be incarcerated or something.
Dan, I was listening to this podcast, one that I enjoy called Beat Your Genes, and it has these two evolutionary psychologists that are on there, Dr. Doug Lisle, and I think the woman's name is Dr. Jen Howk, maybe. Howk. At any rate, they were talking about New Year's resolutions and how you should really do it, and they basically restated what we've been talking about. So,
but probably less eloquently.
Much less eloquently, not as funny and entertaining.
Right. But with more credibility.
I don't know. You are a doctor of psychology.
That's a good point.
And I'm the Grabbler and the Doc.
Right.
That's the new name of our podcast. But it's essentially, you don't want to, you use a goal to be sort of a directional thing to create a routine, a process that we're talking about. And then the process becomes the goal.
Right.
Like every day I want to do this and so forth. And even if I don't do it every day, if I get 5 out of the 7 days doing this, things are going to be moving in the right direction.
What do you think about this as like an addendum to that?
Okay.
And this is a little, there's going to be gray area to this.
Okay.
But I think also this idea of this excitement, like it's my life. I'm changed. Like here's another way that's bad. It sort of works against the idea.
I'm sorry, Dan, I'm confused.
When you over emotionally charge your goals, like sort of like, this is my life. Like then it becomes harder to just like sort of settle into it. Like it's like, because all motivational poster thinking is sort of like this, it's sort of no pain, no gain. And like, put like,
embrace
like
the grind.
Embrace the grind and like, this should be your life and jiu-jitsu is my life. And it's like, and then it becomes harder with that mindset to just be like, I'm just settling into this as part of my routine and I'm going to stay with it. I feel like things that are like, I'm going for this 120% are things you're more likely to just burn out and stop, right? Like, so what I'm saying is
it's overly dramatic.
Most advice you get is overly dramatic. And or take away from even work at, say, you're starting a business. It's like, if you're going to start a business, you have to 110%, 180%, you know, quit your old job. You can't, you know, put your life into it. And then people that have succeeded often say that's what they did. You know, you hear like, you know,
but that's that whole selection bias that we talked about. Right. Yeah.
So it's sort of like that is out there. And even people giving advice and books that give advice is always like this overly dramatic, in my opinion. You need to this big commit. And it's like, maybe that's sort of wrongheaded in that maybe you need to relax a little and just make this part of your routine, settle into it. You do have to commit to that being a major change, like or a permanent change or a long-term change. And then that's the other thing. So if we're saying something should be, your whole, what you just said was, it needs to be a long-term commitment or a permanent or semi-permanent change in your life. If something's very, very hard, you're less likely, you're going to be like, I'm not going to commit to it. I'm not, sort of like, I'm going to never have sugar again. You're going to say, I'm out.
Yeah.
Or if you're like, you need to, if you want to improve at jiu-jitsu, it better be 5 hard days a week. More people are more likely to be like, well, then I'm out.
I'm out. I'm not going to do it.
You know what I mean? Like, so it has to, maybe it should be like, calm down. What can you do? Settle into that. But then don't quit on that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's like.
And even make incremental progress, in changing your process. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of people, if they want to lose weight, they could probably start by just, I'm only going to drink water. You know, I'm not going to have any soda, any fruit juice. So something like that would probably remove a lot of sugar from their consumption and a lot of calories. So they'd probably see a benefit right away just from doing that.
Let me come at it from another angle. Like you said, 2020, one of your goals or 18-month goal is to maybe get a book published by a publisher.
Book deal.
Book deal.
Yeah.
So again, the dramatic or the advice you'll hear a lot, I'm sure you've heard, is sort of, you know, being an author is like pulling teeth. It's, you know, you have to sit down and you have to grind, like all sort of embrace the grind, pain related, like put up with the pain sort of advice. Sometimes that's right. And sometimes that works, but maybe not. Maybe like, what can you do to get that book deal that's not so painful?
That's interesting.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, how can I incorporate it into my life that doesn't hurt so much? It's sort of like it's a no pain gain. Does anyone say that? Like, no pain gain philosophy? Like, cause it's the opposite. I was just thinking, everyone says like no pain, no gain. Like, if you want to write this book, there's going to have to be pain. And it's like, maybe not. Maybe.
Well, for me, Dan, this idea of a very long-term perspective works for me. It takes the angst out of it. So if I don't have a great day, I don't scrap my plans. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, you know, it's an 18-month goal, but it's going to be like the World Championship thing. It's like, I'm just going to keep trying to get a book deal until I'm 127 years old. And they're like, oh, we'll give him a book deal because he's so old. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but at some point you're also going to have to incorporate, from the thing we keep talking about, you're going to have to think, what is my routine? You can't just be like, I want a book deal.
Oh, yeah, that's the whole thing. Like, I'm just going to work my routine, and then, but I'm modifying that routine all the time based on results. So it's like, well, we got to tweak it a little bit. We're not moving, as long as we're moving closer to the book deal. You know what I mean? So I do something, and some agent goes, well, this is close, but not quite there. And then I know I'm making progress. That's all that really matters.
But some advice you'll get will be that of the dramatic type, like some famous authors, like, I got up at 4 a.m. every day and wrote for 4 hours before I started the day, and maybe that'll burn you out. And, you know, like,
I think so. You could get discouraged if you have a bad day. If you miss one day, you're like, "What's the use?"
Yeah, and you're also like, "This sucks.
This
like,
sucks.
I'm not, this isn't worth it."
What do you think of this, Dan? This is completely contrary to everything else we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Peter Thiel, I believe you pronounce his last name. He's one of the original investors in PayPal. He's a billionaire. I think he spelled his name Thiel or something.
Yeah.
Right? So he wrote an interesting book, but he asked this question: is how can you accomplish your 10-year goals in 6 months? Is that a useful question, or is it too preposterous? But it kind of points to what you're saying. Like, instead of saying, I got to go through 10 years of suck to get this, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Maybe some of it's going to suck, some of it won't. But what do you think about in general about that question?
I think a lot of questions like that are good
Mm-hmm.
in making you think through what you have to do. Like, what are the essential things you have to do? Like, so if you have to try to get a 10-year goal done in 6 months, you're going to focus on the essentials. Be like, how do I...
And maybe leverage some activities that need to get done instead of just doing it all yourself.
Right. And maybe you don't ruin 10 years.
Yeah.
And even, because I see the question differently, I see it as framing what you need to do in your mind more than literally getting it done in 6 months. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like if you think through how would I get it done in 6 months, that could be very helpful, aside from whether you can really get it done in 6 months.
So if you did the thought experiment of getting it done in 6 months, you may find out, I can actually get it done in 3 years instead of 10.
Right. If I try these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
well, that happens, right? When you literally get a gun put to your head, you can get pretty efficient and effective, right?
Yeah.
When you're really up against it, right?
Well, all the way back to, probably a lot of people listening to the same thing. I was one of those procrastinators for schoolwork, all the way back in school, where it'd be like, you have 3 papers due in 2 weeks from Friday. And I'd be like, I literally would sit at the computer or the typewriter, if you go back far enough, and just be like, I can't think of what to write. Like, I'd sit there and go, I don't know what to say. Be history or English or whatever it was, and be like, I don't know what to say about this book or about this period in history. And I'd sit there and I couldn't write. If it was the night before and I still had 3 papers to write, I would crank, right? It would just be like, I have to write it now. And that's when my brain, like, whatever adrenaline would surge, and I could crank through, and I would be massively productive. So it was hard to convince myself to do things ahead of time. Yeah. Because I'd be like, I try them and I can't. Yeah. Like, I try and I literally sit there looking at the screen and I can't write. Yeah. So there's something to putting the crunch to yourself for sure. Yeah. Because that's the downside of giving the longer. You have to find this balance, right? If you give yourself the longer time frame, you'll put it off. You'll put things off. Unless you're focusing on your day-to-day routine and process. Yeah. Then it comes back to that, right? Yeah. Then you're inherently making progress. Right. Like, we had mentioned before, I took 18 and a half years off from competing. Right. But I was training jiu-jitsu virtually every day. 6 days, maybe 6 or 7 days a week, sometimes a couple times a day. So even though I wasn't competing, when it came time to compete, I was very well prepared, Right. So the solution to a lot of this is those routines. For sure. Like, what are you picturing for writing a book? You just be like, put these hours aside for writing? I think, actually, Dan, it's not even writing yet. There's activities that sort of formulate a plan and a book proposal. So the key steps, I think, are finding an agent, writing an effective book proposal, and you don't even start to really write the book until the publisher signs you on it. That's really, I guess, how it works. So but you have to write something, right? I think you have to come up with the concept. And do you find an agent with just like a paragraph written, or do you write like 50 pages or something before you? I don't think you write that much, yeah. But I have 3 books on my kitchen counter about how to write effective book proposals. Oh, really? Yeah. And I have the link I shared with you from Tim Ferriss, who has this whole, he had a pretty effective page of resources about publishing
a bestseller or something. I think I sent it to you in the past. Yeah.
And I think also,
I think it's a pretty good information. It seems
like
realistic.
with most things, it sort of depends a little bit because you can have like a great idea,
Yeah.
but it also may be like, I'm picturing a book of fiction where you're like, I'm going to write a funny book about a bumbling spy. And they're like, you better have 50 pages then for them to be like, oh, you're really funny. Or, you know what I mean? Like this.
I think
is
nonfiction is probably different. It's more conceptual.
Right. But even that, there might be something where you're like, I want to talk about motivation. And they're like, well, do you have good, like.
Can you write?
Yeah. What can you write and what's it going to sound like? And,
Yeah.
there might be, you might have to prove it somewhat, even if it's five pages or 10 pages or something.
Yeah, definitely. Those are all details, Dan.
But it's all going to be sooner or later.
But I think it ultimately gets down to marketing. Can you present an idea that some publisher thinks, oh, yeah, we could really sell this? And if you can come up with that.
And then once you have to crank, you're going to have to put into your routine, when am I going to write?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
What? Like, I think it was Stephen King had those hours in the morning. I think he did like 5 to 8 every morning or whatever it is, like before anyone even talks to him. And so
I'm confident it's not going to be a problem. Yeah.
But if you just sort of say, I just want to write a book, and you don't put a plan together, then you'll never write it.
You won't.
Then
it's useless. Then you could waste years writing something, and then you try to get it published, and the way I understand it, the publishing industry doesn't want you to bring them a completed book for the most part, because they want to have input on how it's formed and shaped and constructed.
And isn't it? It's almost like a stereotype or something of people that have spent years writing books and never even submitted or finished anything.
Right.
I think that's more common than people that have finished a book.
Very likely.
You know.
Then if you have an actual contract with an established publisher, that would be very motivating for me just to get it done. So
once you got that, you get it done. That's the hard part.
That's the hard part for sure.
But
that's what I'm trying to.
But haven't you heard that sort of like a
18
trope,
months.
sort of like they'll describe a character in like and they'll be like, oh, he spent years trying to write the great American novel. Like it's become like a thing. Like there's just it's a personality type people that just write and write and write.
Maybe
like I'm a writer that have never written anything, a writer that never published anything, a writer. I think
the only way that
common.
would work is if they really enjoyed the writing of the fiction. And I want to write a book about the ideas that we talk about. So I'm talking about this stuff all the time, anyways. And trying to figure things out, and so it'll be all part of that process. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it's kind of. Well, there's two things. One is you're goal-oriented. I'm goal-oriented. Like I don't want to write something and have no one, have never finished it or never. Yeah. And it'd drive me crazy to not have even finished the book. Right? Do you know what I mean? Like that seems like a waste to me.
Yeah.
That said, back to the no pain gain idea. You can if you write it and you're happy with it, you don't mind writing it and you're enjoying it, and then at the very end, you accomplish everything you wanted to, you come up with a book you like, and then you just can't get it published. It's not the end of the world either, because you're like, I enjoyed writing it. Yeah. I'll, a handful of people will get copies of it or whatever, or, and fine,
That's a great goal when you are enjoying the process.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah. That you set yourself up for a win no matter what.
Right. It's great if you can ever get there. Like I had trouble getting there. Jiu-jitsu is another example. There's people that say, I'm not getting better. Maybe they're getting older or something, and they're like, but I just like it. I like coming in. I like rolling. I like socializing.
Yeah.
And that's great, because then you stick with it. Then you're like, I just come in regardless.
Yeah.
I always didn't quite get there because I always hated not getting better. It always bothered me.
I understand that. That's very reasonable and very normal. I think most of us want to see progress in the activities that we're doing. And if we don't, it's frustrating.
Yeah. But something like a book's different, because you will see the progress. Like, it will.
Yeah.
It will get to an end. You can't avoid it.
Definitely. So it's all very exciting. And what else I'm doing, Dan, is just emphasizing this idea of environment. So in my house, we get all the food that we're not supposed to be eating is not in the house. So now I'm even taking the books that aren't related to the project and putting them away, putting them in my bookshelves, and just getting them out of of my purview. You know what I mean?
But prior to that, were there be days you'd wake up like in tears?
Dude,
like,
I have stacks of books everywhere around my house. I'm one of these idiots that if I hear an interview on a podcast of an interesting author, I just buy their book, and I almost never read it at this point. Yeah.
Does Rory ever come home though, and you're like crying, like I just read this book, this meaningless book all night for no reason, like the same idea of binging on double stuffs? He's like, I just read this book.
No, I just pile them
reading.
up. Yeah, they're like big stacks.
I've done that. I heard a guy on the radio talking about how trees communicate.
Okay.
Through their roots, and I just was like
aspens.
Yeah,
do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of them do.
Yeah.
This is out of the range of the podcast, but like basically the roots all interconnect.
Yeah.
And there's like it's weird stuff like fungi.
Yeah.
So they all like talk to each other.
It's some weird stuff. If some of the leaves are being chewed on or predated by some animal
all
over
the
here,
trees around
then
it
the other
will
ones start excreting something that make their leaves less tasty.
Yeah. So they really do communicate.
Yeah.
And there was this idea that like if you chop down a tree next to another tree, it's better because this tree will get more light.
Okay.
But then now they're finding it's less healthy because the two would communicate.
Oh,
like,
I
do you know what I
see.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and they'd actually send each other. It's really
They're lonely.
It's freaky.
They're sad.
Well, it's sort of freaky. They sort of are. Like they like. Then there's trees that like they'll send nutrients to like their own offspring and like not other trees.
That's way cool.
Isn't that weird? Like,
That's very cool. Yeah.
obviously, I'm not like the trees are, but like they sort
that's
of behave.
evolution,
They
yeah.
sort of behave. It's all
That's what
evolution,
animals
right?
do.
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
And but I heard this stuff and I'm like, I want to read it. Like,
Yeah.
So I did the same thing, the impulse buy. That was
The problem
like a
is,
month
Dan,
ago.
when you get these authors on a podcast, you get the bulk of their good ideas right there.
Yeah,
and,
so you
and
just
the book is just window dressing around it. Yeah. There's not a
because
lot.
they got to sell it, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually it happened a little bit with the tree book where I'm like, oh, that sounds cool.
Basically,
And
what
then
you
I
just said is
Yeah.
the most
Right.
interesting content.
you
in
don't
the
have
whole
to
book.
read it now.
Yeah.
you got the gist of it.
Get the gist of it. Yeah. That's
So-
very funny.
So I do the impulse buy too.
Yeah, so I'm trying to clear everything out. So I'm going to just have my computer, the book that I'm using to research and inform me, and that's about it, And I'm doing a general declutter of my life, and it feels great.
Oh yeah, it's
Definitely
always good.
need
I'm
it.
always
Yeah.
decluttering. It's like a thing now, but I told you before.
I have such
support
bad
it.
handwriting, Dan,
Yeah.
because I used to do crossword puzzles all the time, and I became like an expert crossword puzzle doer to the point where I would annoy people. When I was a bartender, I would open up the Globe, and I would start filling out, and I could answer them as fast as I could write them.
Right.
And every once in a while, a guy would see me doing that, and he goes, "What the hell are you doing? You're just writing nonsense." They couldn't believe that I was
Right,
actually
right.
answering it. But the downside of it was my handwriting just took a nosedive, and it's incomprehensible now. I
That's
can't even
interesting.
read it.
My wife's actually same thing. She's like amazing at crossword puzzles and horrible handwriting.
Yeah, because you're just trying to fill it out so quickly. So I had a list of my to-do list or something was on the kitchen, and I had declutter, but my handwriting was so bad. My son said he thought it said reclutter. You got to reclutter this
the
place.
reclutter movement. We need more clutter in the house.
Stop making your bed. Mess your
Yeah.
bed up in the morning.
I bet that's probably good advice for some people.
What is good advice? Reclutter?
Don't make your bed. Like at least don't make
Why
your
is that
bed. Like
good
just
advice?
relax. I think people that are probably wound too tight,
Maybe.
relax. Leave the bed. You'll
Leave
see.
the bed.
Life goes on.
I've been making my bed. I made my bed today.
I have
Dan.
to.
Yeah?
I have for as long as for I don't know a year or whatever.
It feels good when you get in the habit of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't care that much.
Don't
to be
care that
honest.
much?
Yeah, I've been making my bed, but I can't say like what a big change making my bed's been. I'm like, yeah,
I
it's
agree.
fine. Right,
Right.
it's fine. If I stopped, I'd be fine. Like it doesn't.
When you come home after the day and you see it and that you've made it, then you feel pretty good about it, right? Or not so much?
No, I still don't
No,
care.
yeah.
I do it though. I do it. Like I think there's something to that organization. Well, I have teenage kids, so you see they're like, they leave these horrible messes, and I'm like, they just don't see it. But I was the same way. You just,
Yeah.
I look at pictures of us like laughing in like college, like me and my friends, and the background, you're like, we lived in a pigsty. Like you look behind, like that's not how I remember it. But you look
But you're just
behind,
savages, right?
There was like plates with food on it, and like what I mean? Like It's just all savagery.
Every horizontal surface has
just garbage,
empty beer can.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something.
And
Yeah.
I just didn't remember it that way. But I think it's just part of that age. I do remember in college someone saying, this might have even come up on the podcast or something. We've been doing this a while now, but I remember a roommate complaining. It was like, it was a woman that lived with us and being like, you boys are disgusting. Like behind the toilet, it's all like gross. And
I'm sure, right?
And I was like, why are you looking behind the toilet? Like
looking behind our toilet for?
Yeah, I've never even thought of that area. You know what I mean? Like back in those days, I just didn't even.
Well, Dan, when I was a freshman in college, my job was to clean bathrooms in the dorms.
Oh, that's a good job.
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah. Talk about feeling like whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I found is there would be male dorms where a group of guys are sharing a bathroom and female ones. The male ones are basically, I would go in there once a week, I think, to clean, is to pick up all the newspapers and magazines and clean it. That was basically it. The women's bathrooms were so vile. Like the sinks and the mirrors were covered with so many chemicals and paste and lotions and globs of caked on crap. It took twice as long to clean the women's bathrooms. Unbelievable. Yeah.
I've heard, but I wonder if that's, first of all, there aren't men and women's bathrooms barely at all anymore.
Well, this was in there. They'd be like a rooming group of like 2 to 4 people living in a room, and they'd have one bathroom, living in like a little apartment, you know.
I wonder if that's changed, though. These gender roles are getting so muddied now.
I have
what
no
if, like,
idea.
the guys are using chemicals now?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Probably not. Probably to some extent.
Not in my house, Dan.
Not in my damn house.
I had a quote that I brought in preparation for the podcast, and of course, we haven't got to it at all.
Do you want to do it, or do you want to? It's close.
It's close. We're running out of time. I think we'll do it because we don't even have to expound on it. I think we can leave it with them, the audience, to think about
it. It's like you know what it is? It's like
the poem.
It's like a gift to the people that stayed with the podcast to the end.
Yes.
Here's your reward.
Here's your reward.
And for anyone else, and you could tell other people like, oh, you left before you didn't even get to hear the quote.
You poor bastard. Yeah.
And now also the message maybe goes out, like stay with it to the end.
You gotta. After the credits, there's always a little thing.
Exactly. Yeah, this is the bonus scene.
Right. It's like Rick and Morty. They run the credits and then they have a little scene. So, who is the guy? Kelly Slater, is that his name?
The surfer?
No. Kelly Starrett. So he's the mobility guy that worked with CrossFit. So he wrote a book called The Supple Leopard many years ago. I don't know how many years ago, 5 years ago. The Supple
Leopard. Okay. I thought you said leper.
The supple.
I was like, that's a little. Supple leper.
Supple leopard. Yeah, if you get just figuring skin disease, you just loosen everything up. Everything. Yeah. Your ligaments getting tendons, everything gets looser.
Yeah, who knew? It turns out it helps a lot.
They're falling apart. They're degrading, but they're looser. No, the supple leopard, Dan.
I think we have some of our audience, I think we have a decent leper colony.
Dan, now that I think of it, do
they have colonies? I don't think they have leper colonies.
This could be my book proposal. This could get me the book agent.
Oh, the
supple leper.
Right.
So
shout out to the leper colonies who are listening, though. We have actually more than you think.
We do have a couple of leper listeners. Yeah, definitely. At any rate, so what he says is in this book, very good book about mobility, as he says, if you're about to do, let's say, deadlift, you're going to go deadlift, and you say, I'm going to deadlift 350 pounds 5 times. That's my workout. I'll do 3 sets of it, or whatever the hell it is. He says, don't have that number in mind of repetitions you're going to do for the deadlift. Go over, do your deadlifts, and do each rep with perfect technique until your body doesn't want to do anymore. And I think there's something profound about that. It's almost like we're talking about focusing on the process and not worrying about the results.
That's interesting, because I don't do that at all. I'm like
exactly.
I'm
the same way. But I think what happens is if you do that, your risk of injury plummets. You probably get just as strong, and you probably ultimately end up moving more weight because you perfect your technique. Your technique actually improves. And then you don't have the psychological whipsawing of like, I had a great day today, or I had a shitty day. I couldn't lift what I thought I could lift. It's because there's so much you can't control. You can't really control how your body's feeling at every given day. And you just show up and you say, I'm just going to try to do the best technique I can with my body and what I have, and we'll see what the results are.
And to that point, everyone always underestimates technique in almost anything. Yeah. Certainly all sports and events. You see it. Jiu-jitsu illuminates that for everyone listening that's done jiu-jitsu. You see what technique does, because everyone here has been wound up like a pretzel by someone weaker and smaller and less athletic. And even if it's just when you started, at some point you said, hey, technique is a lot.
The guys who win the tournaments have the best technique. That's all there is to it. And but there's something freeing about that. If I don't get too attached to the results and I focus on the technique, it's sort of like focusing on the process. So this is basically, I think, the theme of the book that I want to write, where we're not going to get too attached to results. We're just going to focus on sort of the right technique. And I think that can apply to much more than just deadlifting, and even more than jiu-jitsu.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that's it. And we've come up on our time. I think we ended with a lot of value there. I mean, this podcast, every minute is so valuable. It's insane.
If you missed a minute, like you weren't paying attention, I think
go back.
Most people,
they should be watching it on YouTube and listening to it.
The full value definitely have to, at least twice.
Yeah.
At minimum twice.
Definitely.
For each listen, I'd say.
So thank you to all our listeners. Please tell people about this. Please share it. Give your friends and loved ones the gift of this podcast.
Yeah, we should for Christmas.
Really, it's
just been like a little piece of
paper. It's your moral obligation to let people know about it.
If you missed anyone's Christmas gift, just say, here's a late gift. I'm sorry I missed it, but here's my gift to you.
Here you go.
A link to the podcast.
That's it. Slide a link into their DM, as the kids say.
Exactly. And then they'll be like, that was the best gift you ever gave me.
There you go.
Or Valentine's Day is coming up.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
What a better way to say I love you than a link to this podcast.
It's good thinking.
Awesome. All right. See you next week.